Hi, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Bonita Springs, Florida. And we're coming at you live from the studios of Darren Miles Photography. I need to interrupt this video and start over. And I want to say I screwed up. About 2 weeks ago, I posted a review of the Sony 85mm f1.4 G Master lens. And truthfully, before the G Master lenses were introduced, I kind of stopped paying attention to Sony a while ago. Because truthfully, I couldn't stand the ergonomics or the battery life of the A7 line of cameras. But my interest was piqued by the new G Master line of lenses. So I asked B&H Photo to send me the 85 G Master. And I spent about 30 days with it, and I tested it in a variety of conditions. And as amazing as the optics are, and they are, in fact, they're freaking awesome. The autofocus was so bad on my A7 Mark II that it was comical. Seriously, it was ridiculously bad. So anyway, I went on to complete the review and I published it. And like they often do, my audience was very quick to pounce. And in less than 5 hours, I got about 10 comments and multiple messages asking me, no, actually they were telling me that there's no way the autofocus was as bad as it was in my review, and that I must not have updated the firmware. Well, my initial thought was, I just updated the A7 Mark II's firmware a few months ago, so yeah, of course it's updated. Well, I was wrong. Dead wrong. Turns out, unbeknownst to me, Sony updated the firmware again recently so that the A7 line would be compatible with the new G Master lenses. I'm usually on top of this stuff, but somehow this one, well, it just slipped through the cracks. So, needless to say, I asked B&H to send me the 85 G Master again so that I could rerun the autofocus test with the latest firmware, which is version 3.10. And you know what? Autofocus performance is certainly better with the new firmware. But just how much better is it really? Well, stick around and find out. And by the way, as you'll see in the review, I'm still not thrilled with the A7 line of cameras, but with optical performance like this, I can live with some of those shortcomings. So again, apologies and thanks to my viewers for catching something that frankly, I blatantly missed. So that said, onto the review. And on paper, this is one of the most exciting lenses to come down the pike in a long time. This is the Sony 85mm f1.4 G Master lens. First, it's 85mm, which, world according to me, is one of my favorite focal lengths. Second, it has an f1.4 aperture, which means it's really bright for low light situations. Third, this thing has 11, count them, 11 rounded aperture blades for some beautiful buttercream and just sublime autofocus bokeh rendering. Fourth, it's built like a fire hydrant and it's weather sealed. I mean, we're talking teenage girl at a Justin Bieber concert level of excitement here. Except, there's just one problem. And that is, in order to capture the amazing imagery that this lens is undoubtedly capable of producing, you unfortunately have to attach one of these to one of these. So in spite of its nearly $1,800 price tag and the fact that you have to attach it to an A7 body, is the 85mm f1.4 G Master lens worth it? Well, let's find out. So first up is build quality. And one area where Sony hasn't skimped at all on their high-end FE lenses is the build. And the G Master sets that bar even higher. It's a chiseled piece of precision metal, complete with rubberized rings, that is very reminiscent of the 35mm f1.4. And it's imposing, coming in at 1.8 pounds, making the combination of an A7 or A6000 series body really unbalanced and top-heavy. The rubberized focus ring is very smooth and grippy, and it rotates with a nice high-quality feel. Like the 35mm lens before it, this lens too has a declickable aperture ring, which is really great news for videographers. Unfortunately, the fly-by-wire focus of these lenses is still a thorn in the side of videographers as well. On the inside, it's a mosaic of 11 elements in 8 groups, and that formula includes one XA element, which, according to Sony, quote, features superior surface precision for effective control over astigmatism, field curvature, coma, and other spherical aberrations. In addition to that element, there are also 3 extra low dispersion elements which help reduce chromatic aberrations and color fringing for improved clarity and color neutrality. Lastly, a nano AR coating has been applied to reduce surface reflections, flare, ghosting, and increase contrast and color rendering in strong lighting conditions. That all sounds really impressive. The aperture ranges from f1.4 to f16. And speaking of the aperture, there are 11 rounded aperture blades, and that really separates this lens from the bulk of other 85mm offerings in the marketplace today. Those 11 rings make for simply sublime and buttercream smooth bokeh rendering of autofocus areas in your shots. Tremendous subject isolation. Sony has also included their latest SSM, or supersonic wave motor, which for fast and accurate autofocus. The lens is also dust and moisture resistant, and at this price point, frankly, it better be. Even the included lens hood is on a very high order of build quality as well. All in, it's a simply divine combination of metal and tactile rubberized parts, complete with a declickable aperture ring and weather sealing. The thing is built like a fire hydrant. So Sony sets a new standard for build quality, and the 85G Master is easily a 10 out of 10. So next up is autofocus speed and accuracy. There's been a lot of talk out there about this lens's autofocus motor noise, but to me, it's still pretty silent, like on par with an ultrasonic motor from Canon. It's not that intrusive at all, though it is slightly audible, so if you are a video shooter and using an on-camera microphone, then it would be possible to pick up some of that noise. But most video shooters will likely be using manual focus anyway. But of course, this lens is fly-by-wire, but that's another topic for another day. Anyway, if you see my reviews of the Sony lenses and cameras, then you know one of my biggest personal points of contention with these things has been the very inconsistent and really fussy autofocus performance. However, with the latest version of firmware, version 3.10, autofocus performance has been improved rather dramatically. This is not to say that it's perfect, because it's not. For example, in real-world situations where you have moving subjects, autofocus is still a little bit slow to latch on to the intended target quickly and accurately. However, if you are a portrait shooter shooting still subjects, then with the latest version of firmware, this thing is nailing focus quickly and accurately with a much greater sense of urgency than it has with previous versions of firmware. It's a really refreshing change, and I give a lot of kudos to Sony. Now, I have many issues with the A7s, but it's nice to see Sony addressing these core issues with each revision of firmware or with the latest and greatest camera bodies. Now, only if they would address the menu system and battery life and ergonomics. But anyway, enough of that. On to AF performance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to aim around the studio here at still subjects. And I'm going to start focusing, and you'll hear the beep if you listen closely. And then I can see through the viewfinder pretty clearly whether focus was captured accurately. Now we're shooting in the center of the frame. We're on the A7 Mark II. That's where the contrast detect autofocus points are. And the camera is set to aperture priority, and the aperture is set at f1.4. So here goes. It's a pretty dimly lit space in here right now. And honestly, we're having no problem. It's focusing quickly and accurately. There's a little bit of hesitation, but it's not the kind of hesitation that's going to force you to miss a shot, especially if that subject is still. There's no question, this version 3.10, this is a much, much better performance. So anyway, it's considerably faster and definitely more accurate. So again, if you're a portrait shooter, then this thing is going to be great for you. If you like to shoot action and moving subjects, then AF still isn't quite up to snuff. But I also think it's very fair to say that Sony really had the portrait photographer in mind when they were conceptualizing and producing this lens. And for that intended purpose, I think the 85G Master is excellent. So for AF speed and accuracy, the 85mm f1.4 G Master lens gets an 8.5 out of 10. So next up is optical quality and the quality of the results. Because optically, the 85G Master is legitimately the best in class available today in the camera world. It really is. With 11 rounded aperture blades, this thing makes perfectly circular and symmetrical and just gorgeous bokeh. And speaking of the bokeh, other positive aspects of note, bokeh color fringing and chromatic aberration are very, very well controlled. And flare is reasonably well controlled too. But, as with all of my reviews, see for yourself. The next 2 minutes or so are going to be a series of stills and video clips taken with the 85mm f1.4 G Master lens from Sony. The optics of the 85G Master are nothing short of spectacular. So last up is value. And as I mentioned early on in the review, on paper, this thing should be considered a monster. Amazing optics, 11 rounded aperture blades, fantastic build, etc. And if you're a portrait shooter who shoots in good light, or one who makes good light the bulk of the time either in the studio or outdoors on location, then you will undoubtedly love the 85mm f1.4 G Master lens. However, if you shoot weddings or events in indoor natural lighting and like to shoot in any kind of challenging lighting, then I'm not 100% convinced that the 85 will be a great option for you, as moving subjects and crummy lighting, well, truthfully, they're not a lot of lenses' specialty, but they're especially not this lens's specialty. Now, autofocus aside, the build and the optics are absolutely amazing. Really, they're amazing. But at $1,798 for a lens with just good autofocus in the right situations, you have to ask yourself if it's worth it. Well, possibly, especially if you make a living shooting portraits and still subjects. Then to me, the 85 is a total no-brainer, as its optical build and aperture blade combination are unique in the marketplace today. And the resulting images the lens is capable of producing are certainly best in class. But if you shoot events, weddings, etc., with moving subjects in low light, frankly, I'd be really hesitant to pick up this lens, and I'd probably look elsewhere. Again, that's my comfort level. Your mileage may vary. So for value, the 85mm f1.4 G Master lens gets an 8.5 out of 10. So to wrap up this review, we give the Sony 85mm f1.4 G Master lens a 47 out of 50 and our highly recommended rating. The final word, Sony has literally sucked up all the oxygen in the room lately, especially the last couple of years, with their A7 line of cameras, and especially now that they've introduced their high-end and fast aperture optics to complement the system. These lenses were a long time coming, and frankly I'm glad they've arrived, because I'm sure as the autofocus and overall ergonomics improve over time with each successive generation of A7 camera, many of the issues that I'm experiencing now with the A7 Mark II will undoubtedly improve over time with, say, the A7 Mark III. Sony has consistently demonstrated that they are anything but a company that will rest on its laurels and not address the challenges with their camera products. I went into this review wanting to love this lens. Couldn't wait to try it. I came out of this review with a highly competent, optically superior lens. Now that said, and I really want to reiterate this, if you shoot portraits, still or slow-moving subjects, you will absolutely love this lens. You really will, because the optics and the bokeh are nothing short of spectacular. But think long and hard if you plan on using this lens in low light or in situations with fast-moving subjects in real-world shooting situations, as the G Master will labor mightily to keep up. Because at $1,798, that's a lot of dough for what essentially amounts to a one-trick pony of a lens, even if the lens does that one trick spectacularly well. This is Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Bonita Springs, Florida. If you like these reviews, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.